Hi, how you doing? And welcome back to a video on the channel. What we have for you today is our wildcard video going into game week 12. A lot of you might still have your wildcards. Even if you don't, hopefully this video will help you out with the odd transfer that you're thinking of making as well. And if you are new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. It is greatly appreciated and it does make a difference on such a small channel like we have. So yeah, let's get into the team and we're going to start in goal. And it is worth mentioning that in this team, we do have a lot of premium players, a lot of heavy hitters in the team. And if that's the case, you kind of got to make up for it elsewhere. And a good place to do that is the goalkeepers, because typically goalkeepers do have the lowest ceiling for the points. But someone like Areola and Matt Turner, they're still playing for their teams. West Ham actually have Forest, Burnley, Palace, Fulham, and Wolves in 5 out of the next 6 games, which look pretty good from a West Ham defensive point of view. I think if you were a bit unsure, Turner provides good rotation as well. But like we said in previous videos, it's hard to come by clean sheets this season. So if you're only going to get 2 points from your keeper, you might as well get them from a cheap goalkeeper rather than an expensive goalkeeper. Into defence we go, and just like the keepers, we are having to cut some funds here, and there aren't as many attacking defenders as I would have liked. You have got Simicas in there as well, who we'll talk about a little bit later on. But in terms of someone like Saliba, I think he is a great option because he's kind of the cheapest player for Arsenal in their defence who's guaranteed to play. Like you will find cheaper options, but they're not necessarily always going to start for Arsenal. And Arsenal do have Burnley, Brentford, Fulham, and Luton in the next four. Sorry, Wolves instead of Fulham in the next four. And I think that is pretty good in terms of a defensive point of view. You wouldn't really back those teams to score too many goals past Arsenal. Now, I've gone for Van der Ven as well. In an ideal world, you'd probably have Pedro Porro or someone who's a bit more attacking from Spurs. But I do think Van der Ven offers good value. And the fact that they're not attacking is kind of nullified by the fact that they're coming from good teams. You know, you've got a Spurs defender, Arsenal, Newcastle, and Liverpool in there. And for me, I think it's if you can spread them a bit defensively at this stage in the season, you're more likely to kind of cover all your bases and at least get some points from some of your defenders. Into midfield we go, and there are a few big hitters in here. Like we said, we've got Son and Salah, and the main question mark you might have for them is, you know, if I'm wildcarding now, how's that going to affect my team when they go to the Africa Cup of Nations if you're Salah, or the Asian Cup if you are Son? So for me, I think they go on game week 21, and it kind of depends on how far they get. You would expect both teams to go quite far, and if they do go all the way, they would miss up to game week 24. So they'd be back in time for game week 25. I think if I had them at that stage, I would probably sell them both. And I think they're quite easy to move off from. You could just go for anybody else and maybe reinvest the funds into your defence as well, or maybe just save it in the bank for when they get back. But I think really that is about 10 game weeks away. So that's so long into the future. You can plan just using your normal transfers for that date, but I wouldn't hesitate to get them in now and worry about, you know, any potential risks that they might have. I would just get them in, and then about 5 weeks away, about game week 16, 17, you're going to start looking at how can I get them out, how can I get them back in again, and you know, maybe even going to use your free hit for one of the game weeks when you're away. But I think if you're transferring them out, there's no real need to do that. So I've also gone with Saka here. Now, for me, Saka is Mr. Consistent this season. Arsenal didn't do great against Newcastle, but on a different day could maybe have got more from the game. I do think, like we said with Saliba, that the fixtures are turning, and I think if you did want an Arsenal attacker, Saka is the most guaranteed for minutes. My final starting midfielder is Matoma. Now, he blanked in 4 games before this game week, but he does have 3 goals and 4 assists in his other 7 games this season, and he's probably the cheapest, most effective option at the sort of 6.5 to 7.5 range. I do think that, you know, he has, because he has Sheffield, Forest, Chelsea, Brentford, Palace, and Burnley in the next 7, they look great from an attacking point of view. I would be a bit cautious about getting any more Brighton players in unless they're kind of a cheap option like I've got Lamptey on the bench here. But for me, Mitoma is somebody that you could get in, and he is someone that is going to be contributing for Brighton. He's shown it so far this season. I think if you had some more money, I do also like Jared Bowen from West Ham. I think West Ham have some great fixtures as well, like we've discussed with Areola. But I think that for that extra sort of almost a million you'd have to spend on Bowen, I think you can recreate those points in somebody like Mitoma. I've also gone with Scott McTominay on the bench. Now, he is Man United's top goal scorer, I believe, this season. And he does have Luton, Everton, and Bournemouth in the next five. So they are good fixtures from a Man United point of view. Whether you start him or not is, up to you. But I think as like a first bench option, maybe second bench option for someone that maybe doesn't start for your team one game week, I think that looks pretty good. Maybe you don't want to start someone like Lascelles in your team. Maybe you start McTominay instead. I think that's pretty fair swap. And, he's shown that he can score goals. He had one disallowed this weekend. So he's someone that's also an attacking threat for 4.8 million. Now, up front, I've gone with Haaland and Watkins. So for me, they are the two most attacking threats, I think, for their teams. And they are also going to start no matter what. I know Haaland went off at halftime this game week, and it's frustrating for those owners to sort of see, Man City score six and him not be involved in anything. But, that's not always going to be the case, and you're going to have him in more often than not. So for me, with Haaland, Salah, and Son, they're all top goal scorers in the league so far this season. I think Salah's fixtures look the best in the medium term with Luton, Brentford, Fulham, Sheffield, and Crystal Palace in the next six. And that's also why I've gone with Simicast as well, because Fulham, Luton, Sheffield, and Palace, they're all at the bottom of the table. They've all scored the least amount of goals so far this season in the Premier League. So I think from a defensive point of view, I really don't have a problem with doubling up in some of these teams, especially Liverpool. Um, Overall, the team rating when I put it into Fantasy Football Hub, shout out to them, was 96%. I think as long as you're in the mid 90s, I think that's good enough. But 96 is obviously a top end, and I think that shows that this team is quite well balanced with the cheaper players as well as having some big hitters. The team value is 100.1 million, but this is if you've got all these players in from scratch. You're probably going to have Salah, Son, Haaland in there already, maybe Watkins in there already, that you got in for a cheaper price. So it's not going to affect your budget too much. And the fact that this is a little bit over 100 mil. So the strength for me is that they're easy to move off from a lot of these players, and you can redistribute the funds in a couple of game weeks if you needed to. Lots of heavy hitters as well, so you're not really got the fear of missing out if you didn't own like Son, Salah, or Haaland, maybe even Watkins. You know that if those players that are also highly owned, if they score for you, or score for everyone else, they're also going to score for you. And it's not like if you didn't have them, you'd be losing rank on other players. The weaknesses for me is, we've had to balance out with the value players, but I do think we've got a well-rounded team there overall. And we did touch on no attacking defenders, but we have countered that by getting them in from good teams. So let me know what you think in the comments. Are there any players that I've missed out? Are there any players that you think I shouldn't have in my team that I've put in? Do let me know. It's always interesting to hear. And if you've got any questions, let me know as well. Thank you very much for listening. Please do like and subscribe. And good luck if you're wildcard in this game week. And I will see you in the next one.